In this next segment of Noelle's case study, I will talk about design step 3 to plan and step 4 to prototype. The artifacts that I will examine for each of these respective steps are a brief set of plans sent via email and Project Builder 1, again for the first project only. I'm going to zoom into part of Noelle's plan. Although their email is quite short and the images have not loaded to view, there is still evidence of Noelle mapping elements of the larger project. In their first design journal, as discussed in the previous case study segment, Noelle noted the possibility of exhibiting their paintings around the classroom. Organizing this element is a central focus for Noelle at this stage in the process. They've selected the 5 paintings to share and directions for how their peers would ideally engage with those paintings. Drawing on the analogy of a puzzle, Noelle is essentially moving pieces into place. Noelle is determining how 2 individual elements together can create the whole picture or project. I've already shown and discussed Noelle's third design journal, found in the ideating step, as this is where Noelle was selecting the rhetorical moves to make in their project. Noelle used 3 separate performance art pieces as sources of inspiration and imagined how some of those artists' moves might be effective in their own performance for the class. Now it's important to clarify that I discussed the progression of Noelle's work using an amended order. Some of the journal entries do not line up with the design step, and other times the journals may overlap or reproduce similar lines of work. So here with the planning step, we're looking at an additional journal entry Noelle sent as it accomplishes a task different than what was ideated in the third design journal. Instead of arguing that this approach diminishes the integrity of the design process itself, it proves the value of using design thinking in a writing space. Completing steps of the process and then circling back or even interpreting steps as the writer-designer sees fit is an important point to prove that the design process is recursive. Moreover, the steps of the design process overlap so as to assure that the writer-designer has the structural support to complete the project. For instance, in the ideating phase, Noelle examined performance pieces from other artists to mine ideas and gather inspiration for Project 1. Noelle explains, quote, "I think also my biggest inspiration for it, I don't remember her name, but it was a segment where she did a segment of people being able, she laid things out on the table and it had roses and guns and she was having the people control or do whatever they wanted to her. It was in the aspects of what the Russian government was kind of doing to people. It was in the 80s and, all the things at that time. And it represented what she felt like the political stance was. I wanted that aspect of it to give the students the availability to voice their opinions on what's happening around them," unquote. Initially, Noelle had the thought that allowing their peers to use available tools on their person was not safe. They decided to use Post-its as a tool for the students to voice their opinions. It remained a possibility that Noelle could again change this decision in the planning stage. Noelle could always reimagine individual elements and details when they mapped it all out and tried to determine how it should work all together. That said, it's best to take a look at how the culminating elements materialized in Noelle's trial run for the first project. I'm now going to navigate over to Noelle's step 4 prototype page. It is important to note that the full-scale performance proceeded without issue, and altogether, it is considered a draft in the assignment sequence, but it was an exceptional first draft. I'm going to briefly go over the organization of the class session when Noelle performed. Noelle was attuned to the sensitive nature of their subject matter and provided a disclaimer before they even began to perform. This was rhetorically responsible, as Noelle found a way to enter into a larger conversation, but carefully considering opposing viewpoints and the spectrum of feeling their peers may experience. Although all the students in the class identified as female, they came from a variety of backgrounds, ethnicities, and races. Noelle did not assume to have authority over the matter, and they did not center their own personal experience. Rather, Noelle wanted to share their experience with unrealistic American beauty standards and the inherent racism and misogyny exhibited by white men in perpetuating such standards. After Noelle shared, they were able to invite in active responses and participation from their fellow peers in the class. Noelle had successfully designed a logical sequence for each project element. Moving from the top to the bottom of the page, the full recording of Noelle's performance has been segmented and sequenced to make it easier to focus on each element. I am going to move back up to show that Noelle begins the process with these first 2 videos. First, Noelle provided a disclaimer about the content that would follow. Then, Noelle shared a brief introduction about what students could expect to follow over the course of the class. Then, they explained the subject matter, the position that they were taking, the segments of the performance, and their expectations for the audience. Noelle also included time duration for how long each section might take. I appreciated how in tune Noelle was with their audience. They asked if they could airdrop the audio for the recorded segments, as they assumed many of their peers were Apple users. That way, students moving through the gallery walk could listen to Noelle's artist statements for each piece. However, we decided to play the full audio on the classroom sound system. Recording of the gallery walk shows a multi-sensory experience for students as they heard Maya Angelou reciting her poem, Phenomenal Woman, and Noelle reading their reflections on the exhibited paintings. You can see and hear one particular student join in and begin to recite the poem with Angelou. It is a wonderful moment affirming the connections that young Black female students would make. All of the elements flavored the room and created several opportunities for Noelle's peers to engage and respond. Hearing Noelle share their insights into the intent behind their paintings also helped transition from the gallery walk into their individual performance. A little further down the page is the performance sequence. You can hear audio playing of Noelle's voice. They are poetically sharing introspective reflections about their experiences, especially in the context of the historical treatment of Black women by white males. Early on, Noelle refers to their sassiness, and this is obviously connected with the work Noelle had done in their first design journal. They had collaged images together and inserted phrases. One phrase said, quote, "You always have an attitude, fix your face," unquote. Noelle has revised the statement in the prototype we watch. They recognize the rhetorical quality of word choice and very deliberately addressed tone. Noelle is able to assert their voice, their tone as power. They can do what their skin tone cannot. Their skin color deprives them of power. As Noelle speaks, it becomes clear to the audience that they are speaking freely. It's not stream of conscience, but Noelle is not reading from a formal essay either. What you can hear is authentic feeling in the way Noelle contemplates their words and pauses between thoughts. Their audio provides a sort of soundtrack for their performance. Noelle is building credibility as they move freely about the room and hear them speak freely about the Black feminism. Noelle continues to speak about labor and servitude. They use the term mammy, which alludes to Black women enslaved to perform motherly duties for white children. Noelle shares statistics about Black women being underpaid for their labor. Then Noelle aligns themselves with the pronoun we. Noelle emphasizes that they too experience this inequality. It's positioning themselves as a Black woman that affirms Noelle's credibility as the speaker. They also capture their audience with the emotional elements. Noelle employs other loaded terms. For instance, they refer to themselves as a welfare queen. This situates Noelle in modern slavery, as the government reduced many Black women to being financially dependent on the system and excluding them from the jobs that would change their economic status and class. Noelle quickly points out the irony of such racist practices. They describe how Black fashion and music is popular and coveted. Black musicians created popular genres like hip-hop and jazz. Black men and women's place in American society has been manipulated according to the interests of white men's needs and wants. As Noelle's voice is heard over the speakers, they are performing in front of their peers. They speak about slaves, welfare, and culture. As they share their thoughts, Noelle places a wig of long, straight black hair on their head and puts makeup on their face. But the makeup is not Noelle's skin tone. Instead, it is a shade of beige, which creates a stark contrast against Noelle's dark skin. We can assume one of two possibilities: that they are commenting on the lack of inclusion in the beauty industry for Black skin, and that this may be the deepest shade available for colored skin, or that Noelle is symbolizing how Black women are expected to adhere to white standards of beauty. They are considered beautiful when they look more white. Noelle begins to talk about the girls that they see on Instagram, the white girls who have gone viral for their physical appearance. Noelle questions what makes them so appealing. Can Noelle be like them? Be that appealing? According to white men, Noelle's power can only be asserted in their outward appearance. Hair, makeup, clothes, their sexuality on full display for the male gaze, and how violent that gaze may become. They reference R. Kelly, a Black musician accused on trafficking and rape, and Donald Trump, the former President of the United States, who is notoriously sexist, racist, and offensive. In context, Noelle references these famous contemporary men who are guilty of objectifying women and often gotten away with it. In doing so, this jeopardizes the safety of women. Subsequently, Noelle feels unsafe. Who or what is in place to protect Noelle? Maybe their fellow Black women, maybe their own voice, their mouth, their attitude. Then Noelle calls all women to action, especially those in the room, right then participating in the performance. Noelle suggests that they might all band together and share their experiences. They might rise up to protect one another. Noelle concludes by inviting the women in the class to write a response to their performance, and to do so by placing an anonymous sticky note on Noelle or on an item on the table before Noelle. Students begin to quickly write their post-its and get up from them to place them. Noelle waits for everyone to be done and then selects some of the post-its to read aloud to the class. There are many aspects to consider in terms of Noelle's success drafting a prototype on the first project. The objective of producing this prototype was to test Noelle's ideas and plans thus far. Prototypes are intended to prove if the thing works, does it perform, is it appealing, is it functional? If not, how can revisions be made to make it become appealing or functional? It's imperative to the recursive process of making a thing. In writing, the prototype is intended for feedback. What suggestions can be made so that the writing becomes clearer for the reader? More effective even. In writing courses, students work in feedback loops where they draft, share, gather feedback, make revisions, and redraft. Writing is much like the designing process in that they both move the maker, designer, writer through steps. Although Noelle's performance was meant to gather feedback from their peers, that's not what happened. The students in the class were astounded by the project quality. They had no constructive feedback to provide Noelle. Instead, the students elected to join in on class conversation about Black feminism, beauty standards, and issues of race. Thus, Noelle has successfully managed to 1. Create a rhetorical situation for their stated issue, 2. Select a project modality to communicate their position on the issue, and 3. Design all project elements into a cohesive whole. Noelle designed a unique rhetorical situation for their project in that they reimagined the classroom space as an art gallery. In galleries and museums throughout the world, artists are challenging and engaging their patrons with socio-political issues of the past and present. Art of all genres, not just performance, connects with their audience and generates thinking through image, gesture, and sound. Being that it was their trial run, Noelle learned, to their surprise, that their initial planning was effective. The multimodal approach to developing a project through scaffolded design journals and project builders certainly supported Noelle's process. They had unlimited resources and possibilities to bring parts and elements together to communicate to their audience. As composition scholar Patricia Dunn emphasizes in her 2001 book, Talking, Sketching, Moving, Multiple Literacies in the Teaching of Writing, writing instructors must make all means available to students. They must, quote, investigate and use whatever intellectual pathways they can to help writers generate, organize, reconceptualize, and revise thoughts and texts, unquote. With a design-focused approach, the steps of the process broke the project down into manageable parts. But more importantly, each step guided tasks where the work students produced could stand alone. In Design Journal 1, Noelle collaged images and quotes about their topic. Despite the intention to brainstorm the first project prompt, the collage could be an isolated text on its own, which provides one reasonable explanation for the effectiveness of Noelle's overall project. They were not writing under the same set of assumptions or expectations that come with academic essays, which often cause anxiety, procrastination, and writer's block. Noelle admits, quote, they've always just struggled with formal writing. It's always been something that is just so structural. There was just no creativeness that they could do other than just saying like creative words and adjectives, but that wasn't enough for them. Like you say multiple times, there's more than one way to communicate, unquote. With the design journals, Noelle was not expected to brainstorm ideas, then immediately transition into outlining paragraphs of an essay with topic sentences, details, etc. Although the steps of the process in both writing and designing are congruent, the expectations are much more flexible and appealing to students in the design process. Once again, Noelle was able to take and prepare design journals 1, 2, and 3 in order to produce a lot of material. Noelle could organize all the elements they had worked with individually and determine an order of activities that made sense for their audience. Noelle was also mindful of transitioning between each of the activities. Much like paragraphs in a paper or sections of a document, Noelle applied the same principles to the performance. They stated their issue and position, then used details and examples to support their position. Noelle also illustrated the issue by gesturing and performing some of the things they spoke about in the audio recording. Drawing on their plans they established in the design journals 1 and 3, the pieces of the puzzle fit together and the project was cohesive.